Hey friends, welcome back. This is Lisa with Not Your College Life. I am here for the mom who went to college and successfully graduated and navigated the higher education system to graduation and has realized that it's not the same world. It's not the same college that you're sending your kiddo to today. And if you are frustrated and want to bang your head against the wall and pull your hair out, this podcast is for you. I'm here to help you, mama. Grab a cup of coffee. I'm so glad you took some time to listen to my podcast today. So let's not wait any longer. Let's jump right in. This week's episode is about the gap year. Pros and cons, questions to ask. I did a little research. If you are a subscriber to my email list, or if you are a member of my online Facebook community, then there's a Pinterest board out there waiting for you with access to the links and the research that I have already done for you. Reasons to consider a gap year. First, the health of your student. Does your student have underlying health conditions? This is the year of COVID, year 2020. So you really need to have an honest and real conversation about the reality of what if your student gets infected with COVID while at school? What risk does that pose for your student? Are they at greater risk? So would they be better off at home until there's a vaccine available? Okay, that's your first consideration. The next consideration is, do you have family members that require care that you need to engage your student in helping with? So whether that is a family member struggling with COVID or with a chronic healthcare issue that requires their assistance, or God forbid, you've got a family member that's dealing with a life-threatening diagnosis such as cancer, and your student is going to be an engaged caregiver while they go through treatment or while they're on hospice. All of those are really awful scenarios, but life can be really messy sometimes, right? Another reason to consider a gap year would be if your family income has taken a profound hit due to COVID for whatever reason. Before you make that decision, though, I would certainly update your FAFSA and reach out to your student's university financial aid office and let them know. There sometimes is hardship cases to be considered. There could be additional resources available. I know at Purdue there's the backup boilers, so it's not need-based, it's not merit-based. There is an employer, an alum, that is willing to underwrite your student's education for a piece of their future income. Backup Boiler is one program. It's not new. Mitch Daniels has kind of shined it up a little bit to make it new and flashy, but it's not new, and many Boilermakers have really embraced the option, but I believe it's available at other universities as well. So if your family's taken a financial hit, that is something that you definitely want to consider because college is not cheap. But before you walk away, do your homework with financial aid and any other options that might be available to help underwrite the cost of tuition. And then lastly, the reason to consider a gap year would be if your student's university has decided they are doing remote learning the entire fall and or spring term, and that is not a learning style that your student can be successful in. That's time to take pause and really consider, does a gap year make sense? I will do another episode about how tips and tricks and tactics on how to be a successful online learner. That'll be in an upcoming episode, so be sure to watch for that. But for now, if your student realizes today that online learning is not how they are most successful, if the home life doesn't allow for that because of all the other things we just talked about, then it's time to consider a gap year. So some pros, I did find some pros about a gap year. There is a catchphrase going around right now that especially because of all of the things we just talked about, and hashtag COVID-19. But they're trying, there's a movement to relabel gap year to growth year. And I think that's brilliant. I am personally very much of a growth mindset. If I am not learning and growing, I feel like I'm stagnant. And I wake up every day wanting to be a better version of myself than I was yesterday. So I think the idea of a growth year is a brilliant idea on how to reframe what that year between high school and starting college is. So things to consider, a pro to a growth year is take a job. USA Today, and there are other articles out there that suggest exposing yourself to a job, especially something considered an essential job. So delivery, healthcare, online services, those type of essential jobs can really inform you as a student. Again, when I'm saying you, I mean your student, can really inform them on what they like and what they don't like to help shape their degree and career decisions now. So many times students have in their mind this ideal job, and they go through building their resume and their degree plan for that job, and then when they get in it, it's like, holy crap, what were we thinking? I hate this. I don't want anything to do with this. My husband selected a degree program not because he was passionate about it or he was really interested about it. He chose his degree plan because of, well, this is what my brother is doing and he's got a good job and I guess I could do it. And so that's a lifetime and a job that doesn't light you up inside. Now, he's made the best of it. He's amazing at what he does. He's moved up and he's leading people. And he just realizes that there's some people that you just don't care to lead because, people can be whiny. People can be babies. People, it can be like running a daycare when you're managing adults. But back to using a growth year to take a job to help inform your student on their likes and dislikes, what they thought they wanted to do versus what they realize they don't want to do. So even if it's not the position that a degree will get them, they can get some insight and perspective into that field during that growth year of employment, no matter where they're at in that vein, right? So if I'm going to school to be an RN and I don't have my BS in yet, but I can get a position in the hospital, whether it's paid or volunteer, and it can expose me to healthcare workers. It can expose me to nurses. I can develop a relationship with some nurses and learn what they like and dislike about their job, learn the realities of what it's like to be an RN. That is really enlightening, and that is insight that you don't get while you're in university. Okay, another pro to a growth year is to volunteer. An opportunity to volunteer, which, again, it goes back to the growth mindset. It can make a difference in the world today, and especially in the essential fields, there is a need, right? So there's if nursing homes will allow it, if senior centers will allow it, these are folks that are sheltered from their family because of fear of COVID. If you can volunteer and get in their circle where you've been approved, you're going through the protocol to be checked for symptoms every day, and you can get in and interact with these folks, and even if you can't get in the facility, if you can figure out ways on the perimeter to engage with them and interact with them, it could be a huge difference maker in lives of other humans. And isn't that what this life is all about, is leaving others better off than you found them? Volunteerism could be Habitat for Humanity, where you're helping to build a house for folks that are less fortunate. You could be volunteering at the rescue mission, serving in the soup kitchen, a food pantry, coordinating drop-offs and pickups at a food pantry. There is the AmeriCorps, which now is being kind of tongue-in-cheek called Corona Corps. AmeriCorps has been around for a good while, and it actually offers tuition dollars for volunteering with AmeriCorps. The research that I found, it actually will provide up to almost $6,200 towards your student loans or your degree. That's amazing. Now, having said that, there is also legislation in play right now. It has not been finalized. That proposes raising that cap from close to $6,200 to almost $21,000. That's huge. For out of state, that's your entire year of out of state tuition. If you're in state, that could potentially fund 3 of your 4 years or close to it. 2 years, easy, if you're paying in-state tuition at a public university. That's amazing. So be watching for that legislation. That could be amazing. A growth year that could pay for a year or 2 of college. What a great investment. But I would put the caveat out there that it would need to be part of, in my opinion, your student needs to make that growth year part of the plan, not a reason to pivot altogether. There are studies out there, I shared this on my Facebook page, that shows that, especially in the year of COVID, the value of having a degree was so widespread. So people with a degree were less likely to be laid off. People with a degree are more likely to have paid time off in the event they get sick. They can use paid time off and have it and not risk losing their job. They have FMLA available to them if they have a family member that gets sick and they have to care for them. They are more likely to be able to work from home and not lose income because of shutdown. Those right there are huge factors. A degree is worth the investment, my opinion. It's worth it. The other thing you want to make sure of, there are some studies that suggest if you don't make a gap year, growth year, part of your student's long-term plan, there are some studies that suggest that it simply will delay degree completion, delay that income generation. So when a student extends their time to degree, so if they add a semester or add 2 semesters, you have to consider it's not just the additional tuition dollars and rent and books and all that you're paying now. It's not just that that's in addition to what you've already paid. You also have to calculate that potentially they should have been earning an income, generating an income, no longer on your insurance, no longer under your roof, or no longer supporting their rent somewhere else, no longer making their car payment, their auto insurance payment. They would be doing all that. They would be earning an income. That is also money lost when you take a gap year. A growth year incorporates that into their academic plan. In my opinion, this is what you need to look at. If you're going to take a growth year, it needs to be a growth year and part of that academic plan. Because if it's not part of the plan, then your student's going to become another one of those statistics that gets a job and gets distracted and never goes back to school or never starts. That's a tragedy. Your student has a gift, and they have a responsibility to live that gift and give that back to humanity. They may not know what that gift yet is, but that's part of becoming an adult and that discovery and that finding themselves. What is that magic that's within them that they have a responsibility to show that magic back to the world, to make this world a better place. Some other things that you really, really, really want to consider before deciding on a growth year is you need to have your student check with the university to determine if they are receiving any kind of aid, scholarship, financial aid, loans, whatever. Will those still be accessible to your student when they decide to return in a year or in a semester? I'm going to suggest if they're going to take a growth year, they commit to 1 year. Do an AmeriCorps, do an essential job, have a written plan for themselves. Develop a curricula, if you will, with outcomes that they plan to achieve, questions that they plan to have answered at the end of this growth year. That will potentially help save a scholarship. That will potentially help save their status as a student. That's the next thing you need to find out. Your student needs to ask, if I'm going to opt for a growth year, is my offer for admission going to be held for me? Or do I have to go through the application process all over again? That could be a big deal because you don't know what the competition or the enrollment limits are going to look like in a year. I would even go so far as to say as some universities may not be around in a year. Those that are opting to go all online for this next year, are people going to wait for them? I don't know. This time next year will be really interesting to see what that looks like. But to my point, find out, are scholarships and financial aid and loans, are those all going to still be available? Will my admission, will your student's offer for admission still be on the table for your student to accept if they take a growth year? A growth year. If your student is an athlete and there's a position on the team for them, even if it's a red shirt, will that change if they decide to take a growth year? And I want to point out, I'm choosing to use the term growth year now because I think that has a different mindset and a different tone than a gap year. A gap year to me makes it sound like, I don't want what you're offering, so I'm going to sit out until you have exactly what I want. I can't handle all that. And I don't mean to betray or belittle the real and valid concerns that come with health issues or financial issues, or the fact that maybe your student is not a good online learner. All of that aside, that's an excuse, that's a victim mindset. I want to change your mindset to a growth mindset. So I'm choosing to use the term growth year here. And then the other thing, again, to point out is a growth year will delay graduation and potential income for a year. Now, if you and your student take my advice and you develop a plan for that growth year and you have learning outcomes and goals that you plan to achieve and that you will set time aside at the end of this growth year for your student to really reflect on what did they learn and take away from that, I think it's time well spent. The bottom line is, if your student chooses a growth year over a gap year, and they are able to find productive and enlightening ways to spend that growth year, even if it includes caring for family members or getting a job, if they find ways to be productive and enlighten their viewpoints, that may actually increase their chances of getting into that number one university that they didn't even consider before. Because the competition's going to look different. And that admissions essay can include that growth year experience and what that means to them and how that has changed them and their perspective. So there's your silver lining. That's me. I'm the Pollyanna. I always look for a silver lining. So we talked about the considerations before deciding on a gap year, growth year, considerations to make, pros to choosing a gap year, and things to consider as potential cons on a growth year. I hope you guys take this and really sit down and have a discussion with your students about it before making any concrete decisions. I think there's great possibility in a growth year. I'm going to be really interested in this time next year to see how a growth year has affected a student. I think if done right, I think it could be really empowering and really maturing experience for many high school students, right? It's this year has been a once in a lifetime year for so many of us. So to see your student take this, what is a bag of turnips, turn it into some stone soup. I don't know how many of you guys know that story, but for your student to take their bag of stones their bag of stone and find the silver lining to make stone soup and become a valuable member of society even before getting their formal education, I think could be really amazing. So I hope you find this helpful. Do me a favor and give me your feedback. Who's going to do this? Who's really going to consider a gap year? And let me know. I'm really interested. If you know of another mama out there who's struggling with the same kind of university should not be this hard, do me a favor and share this episode with them and let them know I'm here to help. That's why I'm here. I'm here to help. Make sure you follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I am at Not Your College Life with Lisa Beals. And if you join my Facebook community or you sign up for my email list, I will also be giving you access to my privately curated Pinterest board for many of my podcast episodes. So that's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you guys have a very blessed week. Until next time, take care.